So that was a resiliency story in that I realized that the long-term goal of what I wanted to do wasn't going to happen. And so I decided to pivot and start a master's degree in business because I wanted to round out my resume and my experience and just have like more options in the workforce rather than working in retail, because I started to see working in retail, I was working nights and weekends quite a bit, and it wasn't going to give me the goals that I really wanted. So started a master's degree in business, and we lived in Little Rock, and then before I knew it, we were sent to move to Boston.
Oh wow.
Because my husband got offered a opportunity to do his master's at MIT, and the military is paying for that, which we're like, okay, that's amazing. We're not going to turn that down. So I need to figure out what I'm going to do, and was able to find a university that was accredited for an MBA, and I ended up starting at Northeastern University. That was another challenge because it was really expensive. It's a private university versus like a state college. But if I'd gone to like University of Massachusetts, I would have had to like commute outside of town to actually be at the accredited part of the university for the MBA.
So how did you get the education bug? I mean, because from going from, grade school to being, wanting to be a homemaker to then being a military spouse.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, I
think part of that was just knowing what education gives you in the long term. Sometimes we get education just for the fact that we love to learn and we love to know things, and I enjoy that. I see education as an insurance policy in a way, because when you have an education, then you know that you're going to get a better job in the marketplace in general. Now, times have changed that people can get better paying jobs without that. But then as a woman, you have more credibility too in the marketplace when you have your education. And I kept finding that I was facing discrimination as a woman, and finding that glass ceilings were existing as a woman. So I felt that having that education, whether I actually used my MBA in an applicable job or not, the fact that you have that and you have that degree, it does help. But also learned a real appreciation, not just for having a degree, but for the process. Yeah, there's a true process of learning when you're doing higher education. It helps you just analyze things, learn things differently. It helps you with your time management.
Figure out what you like and what you don't like.
Yeah. It helps your communication. It just helps. I think you become an overall better person.
That's great. That's a great definition of that.
Yeah. And then my husband, he was like, well, you know what? If something ever happens to me and now you have a master's degree, you're going to be able to be more employable.
Well, and I worked at Oracle for 22 years.
Right.
And when I was working at MCI, I had a 2-year associate's degree.
Right.
I still have the 2-year associate's degree. When I was in high school, I don't even remember what we were told, but we were given, the option, 2-year degree or the 4-year degree. And after I got done with the 2-year degree, one of my really good friends back in Minnesota went back to the state college. And I'm like, why in the heck would she do that? Right? But she did the 4-year degree after that.
Oh, yeah.
And the opportunities that she had going through another 4 years of it, learning her craft, she had more opportunities and knowing, not even opportunities, but knowing the exact area of what study that she wanted.
Yeah.
Where the 2-year accounting it was just accounting, and I didn't know anything more than I could be an accountant, but I did not want to be a CPA. It was just because, first of all, I didn't like doing taxes, and that was like, we all had to do that in our second year, and I'm like, that is not for me. But it's just to know the difference of what 2 years can do for you and what 4 years can do for you. I know that it's more expensive, but I think it really helped. It helps some to figure out, okay, and knowing that you can shift when you're starting, you don't have to complete.
Yeah.
You can shift and go all over the place until you figure out what it is.
Right.
And so the reason why I brought up the 22 years at Oracle is that it got me into Oracle, but to move from Oracle to anywhere else, I know that as a woman with a 2-year associate's, I was not as marketable if I would have had that 4-year and then the certifications afterwards. And the school that I went to for accounting was not accredited at the time. And so I would have had to start all over again.
Oh, that's a lot
even with
to
certifications.
Yeah.
So
it's one thing to start from scratch when you're like early 20s.
Yep.
It's a different thing to start from scratch when you've already built years of your career.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's why I encourage both of my boys, to get a 4-year degree. And like I said, I know it's more expensive, and that it really, if you do it the right way with budgeting and not spending all your money when you're working, you can get through it with a lot less debt than what a lot of people are doing right now.
Yeah.
Because right now people, I think, take out those student loans and they live off of that. And that's the difficult piece of it.
That is really difficult. Yeah. So because of my husband being military, when we lived in Texas, at least we got in-state tuition. But as soon as I got married, my parents were like, we're not going to help you pay for college. They weren't very much pushing me to go to college in the first place because, again, I kind of came from a generation of you're just supposed to get married and have kids.
Yeah.
Well, I also saw a lot of women that were my age that got married to, their husbands right when they graduated from the Air Force Academy, and they immediately went into having kids. And I didn't want to be limited by that. We knew we wanted to have kids, but we didn't want to be limited to me not being able to get my education. So I think a big part of the push of me wanting to have higher education was the support of my husband.
Yeah.
If it hadn't been for him believing that was valuable, it probably wouldn't have been something I continued to pursue.
Wow.
So he's played a huge part in who I am.
Yeah.
Because he's always believed in me and pushed me to be a stronger person. And also being a military spouse, I think also taught me a lot of independence.
Yeah.
I realized that, they're going to be gone.
Yep.
These guys are going to be gone, whether they're deployed or whether they have crazy work hours. And you have to figure out how to take care of the household and the budgeting and all the things, that whether it's the car maintenance or,
isn't it crazy
anything,
how many things you end up taking care of?
You just have to figure out how to take care of them because they're going to be gone.
Yeah. Your business now. Ask Craig T. How did you get into that? Is that because of your tech job?
No.
No,
not at all. Ask Craig T was born. So it was a brand first. And I make the distinction because the way that it kind of all came about was I had gotten into a direct marketing company and I was doing some direct sales. I had a health challenge. I had gone up over 400 pounds.
Oh, wow.
And my son was about to be born. I was almost 43 years old. And I needed to make a turn at that point in my life. And I had a lot of success with that direct selling company, built a big team, made a bunch of money, lost a ton of weight, 162 pounds of weight I lost at that point. Thanks. I think I've lost more since then. But so what ended up happening is Ask Craig T was born from me telling that story a lot. And I had written a book, my first book called The Power to Change. It also coincided with my testimony as becoming a Christian and really just kind of dumping all of that out. Like my whole life up to that point, the idea of this transformation physically, there was a period of addiction and, suicide and suicide attempts, because suicide, I would not be here, suicide attempts. And so a lot of those things just kind of came to a crescendo at one point. And when I wrote the book, some people got a hold of the book, and this one guy in particular, and he got a hold of me and said, "Hey, you know, I'd like to interview you on a podcast." And I was like, "Okay." It was before podcasting was really cool, you know. So we met at the 21C library, and he had some cameras set up, and we sat in a room like this, and he just asked me questions, and I was telling him the story about the book and how a bunch of people had reached out to me on social media at the time and wanted to find out, you know, answers to questions. And he said in the interview, "So let me get this right." He's like, "So you had this whole life, you wrote this book, and people found the book, they looked you up on social media, and they just asked Craig T questions, because my last name is Tomanini." And I was like, "Yep." And so then the interview finished up, and I went back and watched it later, and I was like, "Ask Craig T. That's kind of catchy."
That's how you came.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. And it wasn't just T, it was TEE, because I had been following another YouTube influencer, Gary Vaynerchuk, quite a bit. And he used to write his name Gary VEE. And so I was like, "Oh, I'll just do TEE." So I put it together. I created a Facebook page for it, and it kind of took off. And then I hooked an Instagram page to it, and within 6 months went up over 160,000 followers on Instagram.
Wow.
And it was just this constant flow of people asking me questions. And it was all money, relationships, health and wellness, you know, my faith, you know, with Christianity. And so I developed this philosophy called 4F philosophy, is what this is. And it was finance, fitness, family, and faith. I looked at a whiteboard one day and wrote down all the questions and said they're all in one of these categories or multiple. And so I developed this 4F philosophy, and I started to think about it from a marketing standpoint a little bit. And because I was speaking on stages through the direct selling company, I started talking about this finance, fitness, family, and faith aspect of things as it related to business. And so very quickly, the brand became this like identity for me, right? Yeah. For me personally, I was Ask Craig T. And so like even my email address is IAM@AskCraigT.com, because I am Ask Craig T. Which was a good idea at the time, and probably not such a good idea later. But that's a whole separate conversation. I took it from that perspective for quite a few months, and then when the pandemic hit, I actually needed a place to work because my kids were home distance learning, and I couldn't get anything done, and my job had sent me home, and I was like, I can't get anything done in the house. So I went and found a space to rent in a building where a friend of mine owned the building, and he gave me a spot for like $250 a month. And I was like, cool, little huddle spot. I moved into it as an office, and I had been putting out small pieces of content with like a ring light and a camera phone. And, you know, I started the Ask Craig T show, which didn't go well, you know, but it put me out there. It got me visible as a faith-based business owner, and not a business owner of a faith-based company, because there was a distinction intentionally there. And I had a couple of people reach out to me, and they were like, hey, you know, can you help me with my business? You know, and so they came to that office, and we sat down, and they were like, yeah, this is what's going on. And I helped them, and they were like, oh, you should let me pay you. And I'm like, no, it's not a business. And then I was like, well, maybe it should be a business, you know. And I had another friend here in the community said, you know, are you coaching people? Because I see you a lot, you know, in coffee shops and stuff these days, talking to people. And I said, no, I don't want to be a coach. I'm like, that's I have a problem with that word, you know. It's like there's this dependency thing, you know, and if you're successful, then, you know, great, but if you're not, then you got to own the failure too. And I said, you know, I don't know. No, I'm not coaching people, you know. Well, the seed was planted, and so over the next couple of months, it just kind of drilled on me, and I was talking to my wife about it, and she's like, well, I said, maybe I'm a guide, and she's like, you're not taking anybody up Kilimanjaro, buddy. She's like, you're not a guide, you know. So had another friend approach me, you know, and he wanted some help. And around that time, I had another friend of mine who was kind of hanging out here at the office, and, you know, she was like, every time you talk to people, she's like, I always hear about technology, you know. It's, you know, it's like in your DNA somehow, like you talk about process and you talk about technology and, you know, how to help people grow their business. She's like, I think you're a technology coach. Let that sit for a while. I resisted that for a while too, you know.
You wanted to get out of the tech world like I
did. Yeah. And I also, it still had the coach word attached to it, you know.
Yeah.
But anyways, over now 3.5 years, we've, you know, kind of massaged what Ask Craig T, the company, looks like, and, you know, this brand of the technology business coach. And that's where I'm sitting today, you know, is helping business owners learn how to use technology so they can scale. You know, I think that the problem with technology isn't the technology itself. It's that most people don't get access to the education they need in order to use it.
Yeah, and bringing that back into the education.
Yeah,
you know,
100%.
what you don't know.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, and I remember, and I tell this story a lot when I speak, but I had a 5th grade reading teacher named Mr. Ronco, and he said to me one day, I was struggling with like math or something, and he said, Craig, he's like, people don't come to school to learn math and learn how to read and history. He's like, you should come to school to learn how to learn. And that really stuck with me over the years. And so that's been one of my philosophies internally, because my life is a representation of the fact that even though I had some formal education, a lot of what I know has been through experience and me going after the information, right? If you learn how to learn, you can teach yourself anything. So to me, it was always, how do I get my hands on the knowledge, right? How do I get the information? Someone wrote it down somewhere, or they got it stuck in their head or whatever. How do I extract that out? And then a year or so ago, it became very personal for me, and I was like, wow, I have all this knowledge now, and I can't take it with me, right? I mean, I guess I will take it with me, but I'd rather give it to people so that they can take that information and working in corporate America a lot of the times was people were knowledge hoarding, to secure their own positions. They don't want to give up the goose because they know that it could compromise their value in their position, or at least that's the perception. I think that that's silly. I think that we thrive more when we share information with people.
I agree.
And so that's become the core foundation for Ask Craig T. I call it a business education services organization. I want to teach people how to take control of their business.
How did things start for you when you started? Was it starting with a cognitive connection, or was it the disability connections? How was it?
So, I told you I got my bachelor's degree in psychology when we moved here to Colorado, and I worked for a residential treatment center as a counselor, not camp counselor, but a counselor there. And they actually needed a teacher, so they put me through my master's program.
So you could be a teacher.
So I could be a teacher for their kiddos, their at-risk teens. And after that, they actually sold. They went out of business, and so I went to work for District 49.
I'm laughing because it sounds like the history.
The history of how it happens. But I went to work for District 49 as a behavioral interventionist, and I ran a classroom for kids kindergarten through 6th grade with emotional and behavioral disorders. So I had everybody in my classroom, and we had fun, and I was teaching, and but if you know public school systems and you know the bureaucracy and beating your head trying to get supports and trying to get funding and trying to get, it's, I'm not going to badmouth, it is, but it's just disheartening.
Yeah, and it's not just that district that you work for. It's all the school districts. And I think that that's one of the things too, is that they cut out so many programs, like even music, and shop and home ec. I mean, all the things that are necessary for, for everyday living. And it is the funding for that.
Right, it's the funding. And so I understood that, and so I was disheartened. And they were cutting my program, and they offered me a resource position, and I said, no, I think that there's something different for me. So another pivotal point, right? Right? So I pulled out of working for the school district, and I started the Cognitive Connection. Just me, myself, and I, and out of the trunk of my car, and tools that I
Oh
used,
my gosh, that just gave me chills. The trunk of my car.
And my little, apartment, and I'd have people come to my little, the clubhouse and an apartment area, or the business office or whatever in the front, and we would do cognitive therapy right there, and memory training and focus training and different things, or I'd go to their homes.
Carol, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Wow.
So started it then. That was back in 2010, actually. And then I just started finding those like-minded people and other people who wanted to make a difference. And we started partnering up, and I started sharing office space with some other counselors that I knew. I'd work on Saturdays, they'd work Monday through Friday, and those connections I still have today, and they're contracted counselors with me.
Oh, that's so neat.
So, and it's just
What a great
grown
story.
and grown and grown and grown, and now we have over a dozen contracted counselors
Wow.
and over 40 support staff that go out in the community and work with the disabled communities and stuff and offer them just a better quality of life.
Oh, that's so cool. So, and then you have a place up in Denver?
We
Is
do.
that,
We have an office in Aurora.
and how long is that? You just recently, I mean, a couple years now,
Yeah,
maybe?
it's just been maybe 3 years.
Oh my gosh,
or
okay.
so. We started that
It's
maybe
been,
two,
right?
2 or 3
Maybe
years.
when you and I first met
Yeah.
then, you were just starting
Just
to get
starting
that
that
going.
office.
Yeah.
So we have an office. I have my office manager up there. We have 2 counselors that are working out of there, and I try to get up there once a week, or trying to do twice a week, and just building up the support there because the need is just fantastic.
And now, do you work up based really off of contractors? Because you have what 1099 people that are working for you, but you also have donations. Do you take donations? Are you a nonprofit?
So we started Disability Connections in 2019 to be the nonprofit umbrella to be able to fundraise and do different activities and concerts and just be a funding source for the people who could not do funding for their therapies. So we would offer scholarships.
Yeah.
So we wanted to take those obstacles away. So we'd offer scholarships not only for our therapies and treatments, but for alternative therapies all over the community.
Yeah.
So we're able to fund, equine therapy or water therapy, or we've been able to sponsor whole families with YMCA memberships for their children with low mobility or physical disabilities and things like that. And we've also been able to purchase equipment that people with disabilities just didn't have funding for. So it's become bigger than we ever thought it would be.
Yeah. Bigger than out of the
still
trunk of
growing.
your car.
Bigger than out of the trunk of the car.
And it's because you were open to
Yeah.
to the change and to making things better.
Right,
instead
and
of-
seeing the need and seeing the obstacles to access those things that people are needing and trying to overcome.
Yeah. I admire how much you do in the community itself, not even just for the company, but just in the community, because you have a lot of drive and a lot of passion for other people and their successes as well. So,
Well, I have a big collaboration with the disability community and other businesses. I love to support small businesses and the entrepreneurial spirit and everything. So yeah, I believe that it's all in relationships.
Yeah.
Right? Those are relationships that you build.
Yep.
Not the transactions that we do.
Right, exactly. Well, and also too, you don't take no for an answer. So,
And I don't say no.
oh, okay. Well, hey, can I have some money? No, I'm just kidding.
No.
Oh my gosh.
No, I was in a meeting earlier today, and one of the team members asked, "So would you be able to start services without the actual authorization, and so we can get everything, that we can get the ball rolling?" And I know if I was going to talk to my admin team, they'd say, "No, we have to have everything in line." And I'm like, "Sure."
We'll just figure it out as we go on. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, have you always been one that hasn't taken no for an answer? Or was that a learned behavior
No,
after a while?
I think I've always been that way because, I used to always tell my kids, don't think about the reasons why you can't do something, figure out how you can do something. I always tell my kids that.
I think we need to highlight that.
Yeah. I'll put it on a coffee mug.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to do all the experiences and the events and the sports, and they want to do all this stuff, and I was was a single mom for most of my time raising my kiddos. And I'm like, I can't tell them no. I'm going to figure out how to make it happen.
Yeah.
I actually hit 2 milestones this summer that I had set 2.5 years and 3 years ago.
Wow.
And so that was odd. That's the paradox, right? Like, you're not networking. I'm not out in everybody's face. Like, you've been doing business for 12 years. But the shift to doing something that I hadn't been doing got me more focused. Like, I've literally, since probably Easter till the end of August, I've been in that garage, me and that CO2 laser, and I've got more than 300 man hours.
Wow.
In front of that laser.
Crazy, yeah.
In it, no bigger than this desk,
no
bigger than this desk space. Like, walking in a space this big for 300 plus hours, like 4 or 5 months, and you get a lot of internal dialogue, a lot of self talk, a lot of praying. It's been a lot of praying, been a lot of YouTube. It's been a lot of Clash of Clans. I've gamed. I've wired the TV in the garage so I can stream games in there if I want to play them. And so last weekend.
That's such a dude thing to do. Sorry, I know I'm still
like we need Wi-Fi in the garage now.
Well, okay, so this is the technology bus, right?
Yep.
And Craig just actually did the Wi-Fi. He has the satellite Wi-Fi. Is that what it's called?
Okay, set.
He just put that in yesterday.
Yeah, man.
So
so one of the
yeah, you guys know what you're doing.
It was weird because I have these little wireless modules that are sending it in. I mean, I have like 2 or 3 side businesses because I did the publishing. I created a publishing company. During COVID, I started, and that was just for my granddaughter so I could feed her her trading account, Pearson Pinecone.
Okay.
And so, because I have probably 100 plus trees on my property. And so the pine cones, cleaning them out, and I quit throwing them away. I started cleaning them, washing them, unboxing them, and I sold them.
Wow.
Because people can use them for crafts coming up in the fall, so to make wreaths, home decor and stuff like
Put
that.
the scents on them.
They can do scents, and then I even even using the rubbish. So the ones that weren't good enough to sell in a box, that when I wrapped them with a twine, dipped them in wax, they became fire starters. And the 3 pine cones cost almost as much as the box of pine cones with 60.
Yeah.
And so it was funny to see how that materialized. So one of the neighborhood kids, the kids know that I do the pine cone thing. And so throughout the summer while I was working, I'd be in the garage working, and they'd be like, hey, they'd run over. There'd be times they would come over and ask about the pine cones instead of asking to play with my grandma. Like, is Justice here? Like, yeah, but we didn't come for that. What are they going to do pine cones? And then I was like, what? One of them's a kindergarten, the other one's a second grader. And I was like, pine cones?
Yeah.
Like, for real? Because
it's amazing what kids actually get into, though, isn't it?
I paid him to clean up his yard.
Wow, yeah.
And so his dad was like, what? So I said, hey, if you pick up the pine cones in your dad's front yard, I said, for every one you pick up, I'll give you a nickel.
Wow.
And so when I was talking to the mom, she said, Miles has something for you on the fence. And I was on the fence, and I was like, what is it? She said, that bag? I said, I don't know why you picked them up. And I was like, oh, it's pine cones. I'm paying them. She's like, oh, you're like, yeah, I said, give him a nickel, please. And so... So when he comes over, like, and then I'm counting them out, right? So I'm teaching the first grader and second grader about money. Like, okay, this is how it works. If you want. And so, but over the summer, they started accumulating money, and like they don't know what to do with it, and they're like,
yeah.
And so one's in the garage working on the laser, and he's doing a project. The younger brother comes over, and I give him the same deal. I say, hey, there's a tree on the far end of the property. All you got to do is stay in that one space. For everyone you pick up, I give you a nickel. I wasn't thinking. So I have these big straw, like they're like apple orchard baskets. And I leave it out there, and I go back in 30 minutes, and I go check on him. 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And I go over there, and he updates me. Hey, Mr. Art, there was a deer here in the yard, and he had the big antlers. And I said, what did you do? He said, I stood there, and I said, next time you see the deer, I said, I need you to climb the tree. Because it's a buck, right? It's a buck in the yard, like, and you're tiny. Yeah. And you're out here by yourself. Like, I want you to climb the tree next time. Don't admire him. Climb the tree. And so he said, oh, but he was just walking towards me. Yeah, that's what you don't want. Climb the tree. And so I'm looking at the basket, and I was like, oh, dang. I was like, I'm going to get you another basket. I take the basket. I'm in the garage, and I take him another basket. I'm in the garage, and when I get to 180, I get to 180. So I'm like, whoa.
This is costing me.
I was like, it's a nickel a piece. It's 100. Like he's got more than 100. Like he's good. He's only in a little 2-foot circle. He's gathered 180 of these in less than 30 minutes. Neighbors. I was like, wow. And so I'm calculating. I said, if this is 196, I said, he's over there doing. He's crushing it like this. So I go and cut him off. I say, hey, you fill that last basket up and you're done. Like I'm done. Because when I go back, 360 pine cones in less than 38 minutes. That's it, and I do the math.
He's got a lot more energy than what you do.
18. I said $18. I said the little kids made $18 in less than an hour. And so his brother, who's working in the garage, the next day he said, "Hey," he said, my brother worked for you yesterday. He made. They said, "Yeah, your brother made a lot of money." Because he was like, "Because I know what he gets paid per hour." And I said, "Your brother made more than you in your 1 hour in his 30 minutes."
That's so
and so he's like, "What was he doing?" I said, "He's picking pine cones," and he's like, "It's like blows out the side of his head." Pine cones. I was like, "Yeah, your brother made $18 messing with pine cones. You have to do manual labor. You're in here doing manual labor with me, and you get less than the little guy did in 35, 38
Oh my goodness, that's a business.
And so, but the dad loves it, right? Because he's like, if they weren't messing with you, he'd be over there trying to cut some stranger's yard and do some other stuff. Like, so they're over there, they're gonna be safe and out of trouble. And then if you get tired of them, send their butt home.
Yeah.